What happens when you're diagnosed with either osteoporosis or osteopenia? Do you have to take the drugs, or is there a natural way to reverse it and even prevent it? We're going to talk about that in this video. Hi, I'm GloryB, and this is GloryB-TV, a lifestyle channel for mature women who want to look fabulous, feel amazing, and age gracefully. If you're new, welcome. Please subscribe and click that little gray bell, and you'll be notified every time there's a new video, and all the videos will apply to you. Well, I'm here today with Dr. Denise Shostek, and we're talking today about osteoporosis and osteopenia. Denise, let's start with talking about what are just the basic definitions of osteoporosis and osteopenia? And then my other question is, how are they diagnosed?
Okay. Osteoporosis means porous bone. And it's when the bones become fragile and you've lost mineral density. Osteopenia is the precursor to that. That's what comes before you get that intense diagnosis of osteoporosis. Typically, it's diagnosed with something called a DEXA scan, which looks at typically the hip area.
All right, so that's osteoporosis and osteopenia. Now, how are most medical doctors saying they want to treat osteoporosis today?
Most doctors will give you a prescription for things like Boniva, Fosamax, and these contain bisphosphonates, and it rapidly causes your bone to lay down new bone very quickly.
All right. So what are some of the problems with the bisphosphonate drugs? I've read a lot about this, but I want a doctor to talk about it.
Okay. It lays down bone very quickly, and what we learned in school was it's called cheap bone. So if I went for another DEXA scan, it would look like everything's okay. However, you can be prone to fractures and breaks in the bone.
So the bones can break anyway. I mean, I've read of people talking about this. I've read studies on it as well, or people talking about their mom or their grandmother having been on the drug and then they've easily broken a bone, a femur in particular, right, or a hip bone.
You're right. In fact, long-term use leads to fractures of the femur bone and the jawbone.
Yeah.
A more porous jawbone. So if you need dental work done, some doctors or dentists are going to be hesitant to work on you if you have taken these medications.
My dentist has mentioned to me that in particular the injection, when it's not a pill form but it's a shot, and that in particular has really done some major damage over time in women's jawbones. Now, to do some of your own research, I suggest you check out the website saveourbones.com. Look through their website, get on their email list. I get emails from them occasionally. It has great articles that cite all kinds of references, medical references, and they have just a plethora of all kinds of information to help you, especially when we're talking about these kinds of drugs and then what to do instead of doing the drugs. Now let's talk about dairy. What does eating dairy, milk, cheese, any kind of dairy do to our bones?
So dairy is acidic in nature, and anything that's acidic will actually leach more calcium from the bones. Contrary to the commercials you see on TV, it does not contribute to bone growth.
Now, I have read articles in the past. I was trying to dig one up before doing this video that compared dairy consumption in countries with highest dairy consumption to countries with highest incidences of osteoporosis. And they do compare a lot. I couldn't find the chart on the osteoporosis. Nobody has a good chart anymore that's easy to find in 30 minutes. But they do have a correlation. So dairy creates an acidic environment. But what other foods are high in calcium that are actually good for our bones?
I'm glad you asked. Green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, the green, all greens are high in calcium.
Now, Denise and I are both slender women. We're both over 50, postmenopausal. We're both fair-skinned. And we have both had a DEXA scan, or you had another scan recently of a different type, but the radiologist was able to tell you do have some osteoporosis in your spine, I believe it was. And I do as well, just in part of my spine, and the rest is osteopenia. Now, I will tell you that I am not taking the drugs. I told my doctor I'm not taking those. I'm going to go a different route. So we do have some really interesting things to tell you. Denise has done some extensive research on how to treat this naturally. In fact, she found 2 companies that are selling a supplement that's worked really well. So I want you to talk some about the research behind one of them, and then we'll talk about the other one that has basically the same ingredients.
So there was a doctor who had osteoporosis, broke his hip, and he was taking these drugs that we talked about, and he was determined, I've got to grow a bone, I've got to grow it healthy, and he discovered that you can get calcium from algae. So he created a company called AlgaCal, and in this company they extracted calcium from algae, then they added in some of the other vital minerals that you need for your bone. Then they ran clinical trials, and they had great success. Typically, after age 50 or menopause, women lose 1% of bone density for every year of life. And what he did with his product was all of the women on this product, 176 people, gained over 1% of bone density in 6 months. So they ran the clinical trials up to 7 years, and people who had been on the product for 7 years gained a 7.3% increase in bone density.
Wow.
And these are people, the people he chose in the 7-year clinical trial, they were over 60.
And this is real bone.
Yeah, real bone and real people.
Yeah.
Real bone. Yeah, it's not the cheap bone.
And then what's the other product you found that has the same ingredients?
So another company called Garden of Life imitated what he did through the AlgaCal. And so this is the product, and the calcium is extracted from algae, and there are 2 bottles in this box. One bottle contains the calcium product, the other bottle contains some strontium with some probiotics. And so they ran the clinical trials with over 100 people, and they came up with the same results as AlgaCal. So it appears to be a good system.
Yes. Now, I bought this at my local Fruitful Yield, I believe. You can get it online. You can get it in a lot of places. And so this is really easy to buy. And it's a little more difficult to take because you have to remember. So I always remembered to take it in the morning, but I was forgetting midday and sometimes forgetting at night. So they have a morning, midday, night. And Denise started taking it as well.
It's really hard to remember to take the strontium at night. So you have to be super disciplined if you're going to go on this program.
Yeah. Now, a second really exciting discovery that we made actually came to me through a viewer, and I'm so thankful that she sent me a link to this medical doctor's video where he was talking about how he had been diagnosed with osteopenia. His wife was diagnosed with osteoporosis, pretty bad. And they started taking boron supplements. Now, most boron out there you'll find is only 3 milligrams per capsule, but he was taking himself 75 milligrams a day, and his wife was taking 150 milligrams a day until she improved, and then he put her back on 75. And I did find folks were talking about this company, Hakala, and I'll link all of this stuff in the description box below the video. This one is 75 milligrams per tablet, and they're just small tablets. They're not like horse pills. So
that's nice.
Yeah, they're just they're just this big.
And
so
you know what, Glory? Let's look at the boron content in our Grow Bone System, just to give people an idea.
Yeah.
So this one contains 3 milligrams of boron.
Yeah, not much.
Not much compared to this.
Yeah. Now, I finished my Grow Bone System and just forgot too many times. So I'm only doing the boron. Denise is doing both. And what,
I'm only doing the Grow Bone System.
Oh, you are? Oh, I thought you were going to do the Boron
No,
as well.
we're going to compare. So we're doing a contest. I'm doing this for 6 months.
Yeah. And I'm doing this. Yeah.
And then we're going to get DEXA scans, and we're going to report back to you our findings.
Right. So hopefully we'll have the other DEXA before the end of 2019. And so here's another question for Dr. Denise. Besides diet, changing the diet to more leafy greens and all that kind of thing, eliminating dairy, and besides taking supplements, what else can we do to grow real bone?
That's a good question. I recommend to people that they eliminate acidic things in their diet, such as alcohol, sugar, a lot of sugary foods. Quit smoking. I know that these are like really easy things for us to say, and I know that they're super hard to do. But the number one thing for people our size is weightlifting. We've got to put resistance on the bones, so exercise is going to be critical. And if we're going to do weightlifting, we need to be doing it 3 times a day. And I'm not talking about
3 times a week.
Or 3 times a week. And I'm not talking about 2 or 3 pounds here. I'm talking about start with 5 pounds, work your way up to the 8s, work your way up to the 10s, and keep working your way up from there.
Right. Upper body and lower body. Right.
And our diet is so critical. Green leafy vegetables needs to be a part of everyone's everyday diet.
Yeah,
and this
every
isn't
day.
just for women. There are men who get osteoporosis as well.
Well, like that.
Like that
MD.
doctor.
Yeah. Right.
Both those doctors, the one with Algical and the
Oh,
one...
right.
Yeah.
The men. They were both men.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like we said, we plan to get another DEXA scan, and hopefully by the end of the year, that's when we'll have our results. And, you know, so it's one system against the other, but it's a good way to test them to see which one does better. Actually, she lifts more weights than I do, I think. When that video is live, I'll link it in a card up here and also in the description box. And then, of course, you can always click it on the right side of your screen. But for now, before we have that result, we'll have 2 other videos that you can click on the right side of your screen on anti-aging and health. And I'll see you in the next video.